I am live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And as you can see on Facebook and YouTube, we are broadcasting what's going on my screen. So today I'm going to be talking about what I've learned from publishing my novel through Patreon. Another way to put it is what I've learned through distributing my novel. And I'll talk a little bit about how I see what the difference between publishing and distributing is. But right now, I'm just making sure we are live everywhere. I'm double checking on here. So if you guys have any questions throughout the live stream, oh, I haven't gone live on Facebook yet. So here we go. Streaming software. Yep. All right, going live on Facebook now. So bear with everybody. All right. Starting. You are live now. Hey, Facebook. Welcome to the live stream. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Now, those of you who are watching on Instagram, just a warning, you can't see what I'm showing on my screen. So I would recommend going over to Bodhi the Movie Maker on YouTube or going to Bodhi Werner on Facebook. And yeah, depending on where you guys are watching from, just drop your questions in the comments if you have any. So, yeah, first off, a little bit about me. Hi, I am Bodhi Werner. I'm an author, a writer. I am an award-winning indie filmmaker. I like to call myself a creative generalist because it sounds better than a jack of all trades and a master of absolutely none. A jack of 5 or 6 trades and a master of none. No, but really, to be a storyteller nowadays, it behooves one to be a creative generalist, because as we know, the more you can do, the more control you have over the final product. So being able to write, distribute, promote on social media, your writing, those are all different creative practices and skills, and if you hone all of those, then you get to be in control of your distribution pipeline. And so that kind of brings us to what we're going to be talking about today. One of the methods that we can use to share our voice is by by distributing our content online. Let me get this so that you can see it. I'm trying to get it to fit. There we go. It looks like it fits now. So, my novel, Northport 1999, is currently being distributed online through patreon.com. You can find it at patreon.com/Bodhi the Movie Maker. This course is going to be about everything I've learned doing that. What's up, No Face? Hope you're doing well. Today, instead of reading from my book, I'm going to talk about how I'm publishing it/distributing it online so that people who are interested in doing the same thing can follow along. They can learn from my mistakes and successes and publish their own writing online. So, real quick, speaking of Patreon, on the screen you'll see my Patreon founding members. Thank you guys so much for being patrons and supporting my work, including this broadcast and the writing of my novel. You guys are the best. I love you. Couldn't do this without you. Thank you so, so much. Thanks again to the Patreon founding members. And thank you to the Minnesota State Arts Board and the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment for supporting these live streams. These live streams are in part supported by a grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board. So, back to my novel and the purpose of this talk. Here we are. Northport 1999 is a sci-fi thriller mixed with horror, mixed with espionage, and it's centered around 3 young adults who are working to solve the mystery of their mutual friend's brutal and strange death. And in doing so, they face off with human animal hybrids, cyborgs, and the mad scientists who created them. And it's set in a small town, which is based on Duluth, Minnesota, where I live. And my project, the book, the pilot episode screenplay that I wrote based on it, and the pitch that I wrote based on it were all selected to the world's largest TV festival, Catalyst Content Festival. And this graphic that you're seeing here shows that my production company has received 6 selections. Um, my book, my mother's memoir, and the pilot episodes and the pitches based on those books have all been selected. So let's just don't jump right into the purpose here. How to publish your writing online. We're going to be doing this over the course of 4 live streams. First one is today, then it's going to be next Saturday, and then it's going to be the Friday and Saturday after that. The date on this is wrong, so it's going to be next Saturday, the 18th, and Friday after that, the 24th, and then the following Saturday, the 25th. So, how to publish your writing online using a subscription service. What we'll be covering in this whole course, I'm going to share what I have learned so far in my process of distributing my novel on Patreon so you can do the same with your writing. These this will include why to publish via a subscription model, how to set up your campaign. That nomenclature comes from a crowdfunding campaign, and we're going to get into why they call it a campaign and why crowdfunding is an important word. So then there's setting up pledge tiers, meaning the different amount of pledge sizes that you can offer your patrons that they can select from. Promoting and inviting patrons and incentives to promote your Patreon campaign. We're going to talk about a launch strategy, which includes like a live event, a launch event, a launch party. We're going to talk about posting strategies and a schedule for posting to your Patreon regularly, and further advice on how to maintain your Patreon campaign ongoing basis and ongoing promotion as well. So, what is Patreon? It's here on the screen, but before I answer, I'm going to take a sip of coffee. The coffee fairy brought me a fine roast of delicious coffee. I'm so very happy. So I'm just checking in, making sure my stream is happening. It does appear to be. You guys let me know if you see any glitches or any problemos. I recently had some weird technical difficulties in the last couple weeks, and I'm so glad those have been fixed. As you can see, I am not frozen in place as I was last week. So, what is Patreon? Patreon is a subscription platform where your patrons sign up to get access to the content you put out. It's like a private social media feed that patrons pay to access. And you see, I said content. This course is about what I've learned publishing my writing on Patreon, but Patreon is very popular with all different types of content creators: video, podcast, art, live stream, everything you could imagine, can go out on Patreon. It really is just like a social media feed that, is behind a paywall, meaning your patrons pay to get access to it. And then that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Then there can be physical rewards that your patrons get for pledging, and I will talk about how I've utilized that technique, utilized that in my Patreon. Um, one thing that I want to say real quick about the question of like charging people to have access to a feed, and in response to, like, well, they could just go to Facebook and enjoy social media for free, why should they pay to access your feed? It's important to note that when you go on Facebook or Instagram, the first thing you're probably gonna see is an ad, and then if you time it on a regular interval, a matter of seconds, really, as you're flipping through a feed, you're gonna experience ad after ad, and we've become normalized to that. But that's how Facebook makes you pay as a user to view your feed. So when you switch over to Patreon and you're patronizing somebody and then seeing their feed, you're removing all those advertisements, and instead you're just directly supporting the person whose content you're looking at instead of directly supporting Facebook. Now, that's not to say I think, Facebook is, something that should be thrown away and we should all go over to Patreon. I think it's all in balance, but it's good to be aware that there is, a revenue model set up, and so if you want to just go look at somebody's content without ever being pestered by ads, Patreon's a great way to do it because you pay to access, and then there's no ads. It's just you connecting with that artist and their content that they choose to put out regularly. What I'm showing on the screen is the public view, well, actually, the member view of my Patreon right now. You'll see there's a background image populated with some art, Northport 1999 by Bodhi Werner. There's a little profile image. Again, it says Northport 1999. And then the handle for my Patreon account, Bodhi the Movie Maker. I'm going to talk about each item here and how to create and how to edit and why I chose the text I did. Then we have a description, like a very basic description. Bodhi the Movie Maker is creating a sci-fi horror slash spy thriller story world and more. And then you'll see there's a feed of posts. On the top, you can see it's videos. So I'm going to show you that feed right now. I'm going to open up a link and I'm going to switch the live. I'm going to stop screen sharing and I'm going to start screen sharing again. And let's see, I believe, yep, this is the one. So this, again, so we got my background art, we got a profile picture here, which is the logo. I'm going to talk a bit about branding and how I created a unified image. Bodhi the Movie Maker, creating a sci-fi horror spy thriller story world and more. So your users can then see your content feed. And you'll see here, this is the private feed that you see when you sign up on Patreon. And right now, the most recent stuff that I've done is a lot of behind the scenes videos, some of them including lots of text underneath with pictures. And so these are videos about the writing process. And these videos are hosted directly on Patreon. You can upload a YouTube video to Patreon as like a private unlisted link, but in this case, these things are just solely on Patreon. You can't access them anywhere else. Sometimes I put up something on Patreon that also goes up on social media, and usually I make those a public post. So people who go to my Patreon can see a few of my posts, but most of it is just stuff that only the patrons can see. And usually when there's pictures, there's a bunch of text underneath, updates about what's going on. This is a private sort of sneak peek of a screenplay that I'm working on, and then I talk about the process of adaptation. This is 2022 year in review. This is a collage of a bunch of different art that we did for this project over in that year, and that was on the last day of the year, a way of celebrating what we'd accomplished with our patron support. And so a bunch of videos, and then we scroll and we see a bunch of illustrations. For those of you who recognize these illustrations and these specific pictures, I have a policy of always putting it out first on Patreon. That's never gone out to the public, so I'm not gonna show much of that. I'm gonna go by that fast. But, pretty much my go-to thing is if I'm gonna put it out publicly, I'm gonna give it to my patrons first, so they get early access. I wanna provide them as much value as I can. Then here is the 50-minute audiobook segment, um, narrated by Brandon Farr. He is one of the founding members of the project. So that brings me to another point of why Patreon? Why do you want to create a Patreon and start putting your work out, whether it's writing, or your unfinished book? Why would you wanna share it? It's because you start creating community. You start building community. So, Brandon Farr signed up as a Patreon founding member early on, and we've been working together, and that wouldn't have happened without this community creation tool that I'm using. You know, he's invested. He got literally invested in the project, and I'm so lucky to have him as a founding member and a team member. So, Patreon can be a great way to build community and for your patrons to have your art and you as part of their, identity. They love supporting you, and, know, this is a great way for them to get involved. So I put out lots of videos, lots of content. I have shared hundreds of posts, exclusively on Patreon for the Patreon founding members. Um, they can search by different types of media, images, video, audio. They can search the different months that I've put stuff out. They can specifically type something in, like if they wanna see something that has to do with Madeline, one of the main characters. I've tagged things where I'm talking about Madeline or she's present in the writing. So you'll see here, the 7th segment. I put out my book in segments. That's one of the things we're gonna talk about. So I'm gonna go back to the presentation here. So that's been a little tour of, how I use Patreon to distribute my book. Now, why do I say distribute sometimes and publish sometimes? Because I plan to publish the novel to the public conventionally in a ebook, uh, this year in October. Meanwhile, I have been distributing it in regular segments to Patreon, for a long time now, so they've been getting early access. So, that's one way to put it. So this is what it looks like if you haven't signed up yet and you go to my Patreon profile. The first thing you'll see is the tiers that you can sign up for, and right now I only have 2 tier options, and $5 a month, $25 a month, and it's very easy to sign up, and underneath the tier options, you see a list of things that it comes with. Exclusive early access to Northport 1999 in regular segments, a signed copy of Northport 1999 paperback when it comes out, credit as a founder in the ebook and paperback when they come out. You can see I wrote founding member. That's the name of this tier. That you get to name your tier. Some people just call them like gold member, silver member, platinum member, and so founding member for me resonated with the idea of people getting in at the beginning of this process as I'm developing it and helping me, um, manifest this project, and I like to think of them as a founder of the project, an early supporter, and that those words resonated with that meaning for me. So, credit as a founder in the ebook and paperback when they come out, Patreon only community, I'll discuss that a little bit more, and high-res content/desktop and phone wallpapers. One thing that's not listed here, but I talk about all the time, is that I regularly send out swag. So, signed, um, limited edition note cards of the art from this project that I print here in my home studio on archival quality, museum quality paper and inks. So here's Madeline Bishop, one of the main characters. These illustrations are by Gus Trout and myself. So today's lesson about setting up your campaign. So let's go a little bit more, take you a little bit more on the tour. I'm going to show you that page we were just talking about. Okay, and let's do that. So in the setting up your Patreon, so I showed you the tiers, and then there's a quick link to my YouTube right here. There's and then you've got the main description place. I'm Bodhi Werner, an indie movie maker, and now also a writer because every great movie comes from a great story. I have finished a novel called Northport 1999. It is a sci-fi horror crossed with a spy thriller set in 1999 in a fictional reimagining of Duluth, Minnesota called Northport. I will be sharing all sorts of content, mainly focusing on the Northport story world. And then I'm not exactly sure how well this video will come through, but I think it will. I think it can. Um,
What's going on in Northport? I mean, I think Northport's very visual. I actually think you should do comic book too. Have you thought about doing comic book?
yes, it's definitely going to be a graphic novel or a comic book. So I'm going to restart this little video. This is called my teaser video, which is right there, right above the description. I use this to kind of hook the potential patron, the viewer, the reader. Um, so this is hopefully does the heavy lifting for describing the project in a way that entices people to sign up, join. So I'm going to mute myself real quick, and we're going to start the video.
On in Northport. I mean, I think Northport's very visual. I actually think you should do comic book too. Have you thought about doing comic book?
Yes, it's definitely going to be a graphic novel or a comic book. I love that you said that.
The juxtaposition of a small town getting involved in such a big unraveling story.
It pulls you in, like, it's ridiculous. It really is.
It's like a sci-fi horror mixed with a spy thriller.
This is awesome. This is like everything I love.
A mix of like X-Files vibes and Stephen King vibes.
And the description of the monster towering behind them. And do you scream to your friend who has a monster behind him because then you get the monster's attention?
If you are into spooky stories, small town vibes, mysteries, then you're in for a treat.
I was absolutely blown away by this world that you have created.
I absolutely loved it.
Monsters, cyborgs, mad scientists.
I will give it 10 out of 10.
Epic, unpredictable, twisted, dark, scary, gruesome. Just flat out gruesome.
I am back. So yeah, that was the teaser, and that was a video comprised of test reader feedback that I got. Most of that I got before I ever launched the Patreon. So that's the second version of this video, which included the co-founder of Sundance Film Festival's interview of me about my book. She was the one at the beginning, Serena Catania there. What's going on in Northport? So anytime you get a good gem like that recorded anywhere, think about adding that to your reel, so to speak, your teaser video. Now, for those of you who haven't created a teaser video and you don't have something to add those little tidbits to, how I did it was I asked a group of people I knew to be test readers, and I asked if they knew anybody who might want to be a test reader. And then I got on a Zoom call with them and recorded their feedback, their thoughts. Not only did that help me improve my book, but it gave me perfect material to promote the book. And then I also used footage that I shot from around the neighborhood, places that are actually in the book, that give this vibe. You know, you saw the structures, the buildings, the do not enter signs, the security cameras. These are all places that I walk by frequently on my daily walks, which have inspired this story. And then, of course, there was a lot of art by me and by Gus Trout that was in the video. So, if you want to create a teaser, you can kind of use the way I did it as a template. Your tiramisu, great info and easy to follow. Thank you. Well, why, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know how to like that, but rest assured I'm putting a big thumbs up on it. So let's continue. So that teaser is just one part. Let's turn this back on. Let's see, is there a way to... Nope. Okay. Let me restart the screen share. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Okay. So why is it want to be like that? Okay. I'm ready. Help me out here. Help me out. Here we go. Cool. So we're back where we left off. So that's how a teaser fits into the main page of your Patreon, right above your description. And then you'll see here 129 exclusive posts. So I'm putting them out regularly, as much as I can. Then Patreon also offers like a private messaging platform. People can message you. Patreon is also an app on the phone, so people can connect easily on the phone. Now, as you'll see, if we start scrolling down, you see what the public view looks like. Each post has a preview image and a preview of the text. And for videos, you can choose if you want part of the video to be a preview. And I set for this video the first 10 seconds of this, I think, 5-minute video to be a preview.
I want to share with you.
But then if you want to watch the rest, you have to sign up. And the same happens for the text. You can see a little bit of it, but to continue reading, you click and it sends you to join now. Evidently, there's a little glitch there. But then you'll see these posts are blurred out because it doesn't show you unless you've signed up. So that's the idea of the paywall here. You can see this feed just goes on and on. See all 158 posts. So, boom. Let's get back to the information. And again, if you guys have any questions, just drop them in there. I'm just going to keep on keeping on. So what is Patreon? Patreon, the continued part of this answer. Patreon is also considered a crowdfunding platform. Think Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Yeah. But unlike Kickstarter and Indiegogo, it's ongoing, not just a one-time, one-project campaign where you're trying to reach a money goal, and if you get there, you get the money, and then you create the project. No, this is about supporting somebody's content over a period of time. There's no commitment. People can sign up for 1 month and cancel. They can stay patrons as long as they want. So there are some good alternatives to consider if you want this kind of monthly support model that Patreon offers, but you want to look at other things. Other ones that I've heard of a lot, buymecoffee.com, a lot like Patreon. It might have even been around earlier than Patreon. Instead of telling you features and stuff and comparing them, I'll just give you my take on one of the things that it has that I like more than Patreon. It has an easy way for people who don't want to sign up to a membership to give you a one-time contribution. So if you don't want to sign up for $5 a month right now, they can give you $5 right now or $10 right now. They can buy you a coffee. That's where the buymeacoffee.com comes from. So, however, with Patreon, the workaround is what you do is you make a PayPal account and you have a paypal.me. And a lot of people have like a link tree on their Instagram or whatever, and people click that and you can see it. You can see somebody's links. In mine, it's got my website, my book, my Patreon, and my PayPal. And so if people prefer to support through a one-time contribution, which a lot of people do, they go to that instead of Patreon. But for me, that means I have to have two accounts. I have to have two links. I have to tell people about both of them. They're not just aggregated in one place like buymecoffee.com. So that's an interesting thing that I like about that over Patreon. Now, the next alternative, Facebook and Instagram now offer membership feeds where you have some exclusive content in tandem with your public content, and your patrons have to pay to get access to that exclusive content. Here's one of the things that I don't like about that compared to Patreon is that you have to have 10,000 followers to even qualify for setting that up on Facebook, on Instagram at least, and I'm assuming it's also the case on Facebook. I recently became monetized on both Facebook and Instagram for people viewing my videos, but I still not at the 10,000 follower mark on Instagram. I don't know what the number is for Facebook, so I don't qualify for that membership thing. Plus, I think as far as name, trust, brand recognition, I think Patreon people like that more than Facebook, Instagram, more than Meta. We won't get into all that here, but so why I personally chose Patreon. Name recognition. I had just heard so many YouTubers and creators who have a Patreon. And I'd seen other people doing similar things to what I want to do, what I wanted to do before I created my Patreon, finding success through the Patreon model. So name recognition was the first thing. If I had to guess, if I had to come up with a crowdfunding place that would fit what I wanted to do, the only one that I could think of, because I'd heard of it so much, was Patreon. And so that the ubiquitousness gives it a credibility when people are entering their credit card info. I don't want them to think twice about the security of their private information. So that's something to definitely consider. I'm going to shift myself over so it's easier to read my presentation. So what is the purpose of doing a Patreon for me? Some people might just think, it's like, oh, this is a way to monetize your content and to earn, some revenue, keep supporting yourself as an artist. Yes, that's part of it. But as you'll see, for me, the most important things are it's about growing the audience. Yes, growing funding for projects, but it's not really about it being a money-making endeavor for me. At the level I'm at, I'm giving a huge amount of time to the Patreon. If you were looking at it from a financial standpoint, I'm making lots of content to put out on there, including mailing out note cards, which are, this is material and time and postage. And so the profits are kind of break even, if that, from a money standpoint, but that's not really the main thing for me. The main thing is about building community and the satisfaction of getting to share my work with people who appreciate it and getting to hear their feedback and their ideas and getting to make my work better using them and incorporating them. But if you're more of a business-minded person and you can come up with the business plan and figure out, what's the right amount of physical stuff you should put out, what's the right amount of digital stuff, you can make it very profitable. I've seen very, very profitable Patreons. Of course, that's the goal I'd like to go. But I'm overjoyed with the idea of sharing my content and building an audience before my book is even actually physically published. This is a great way to start building the momentum. And that also increases my credibility with industry people, literary agents, publishers, awards, competitions. Business opportunities are, I have a better time applying for them, let's say, when, I can show a number of analytics, an audience that I already have a patronage. So let's talk a little bit about the setup process. You want to choose the name for your campaign, whether that's your name or whether that's the name of your project, or in my case, Bodhi the Movie Maker. Why did I choose Bodhi the Movie Maker instead of Northport 1999 if Northport 1999 is the main focus of my Patreon at this point? And that's because it's exactly that. It's the main focus at this point, but it's Bodhi's focus, and the reason that I created the book Northport 1999 was to turn it into a TV series, and before that, turn it into short film proofs of concept. And so you'll already see exclusive short film content on the Patreon, and lots of discussions about cameras and stuff, and lots of screenplay stuff. So I really wanted a place, an outlet where I could share that whole process, not only the process of developing and writing a novel, but adapting it into a television series, the journey of working in the industry and figuring out how to go from where I am to a guy who's actually making a TV show. That's my aspiration with this, and sharing every step along the way. So choose the right name for you. This will also be the URL extension, patreon.com/Bodhi the Movie Maker. So the name that you put is also going to be the URL. It's going to be your handle. So description. So the about section and the trailer, or the teaser, the one that I showed you. So what makes a good teaser? In my case, it was the audience testimonials. I started with the biggest name, Serena Catania, co-founder of Sundance Film Festival. The editing was used to keep it lively and to switch back and forth. We had a lot of Chris Hoffman, who gave us very vibrant descriptions of the story and the things that he liked. And so instead of having 40 seconds of him right in the beginning, I cut him up to different chunks. And that gave the editing some levity. We were going back and forth between people and the pace and the intonation of their voice. So it kept you watching as a viewer. Epic, bloody, and then someone else, small town vibes, and then back to Chris. Monsters behind you, tingling on the back of your neck. Anyways, so you want the description to leave the reader hooked. You want the teaser to do the same. The use of evocative imagery and the promise of something, being a part of something large, being a part of a community. That's the whole thing that I'm really trying to sell with this Patreon, is that you're part of a creative community. And, the evidence of that is people engaging in, we send out secret missions with note cards. That's something we have done where they get to choose a code name, because every secret agent needs a good alias. Because there's espionage themes in the book, we want the founding members to choose code names. So not only will they be credited by their name if they want to be, unless they want to be anonymous, but they'll also, next to their name, have their code name. Jay Stoneburner, codename Bean. Brandon Farr, codename Diamond Hands. So that's one way that people are engaged through the community stuff. We have engaging things that we reach out to them and ask for their feedback and ask for them to participate in. And then there's also, Gus Trouth, one of the founding members, who's helped me with illustrations. These are both mine, but this is his. He's an amazing illustrator animator. And then there's Brandon Farr, volunteering to narrate a 50-minute audiobook. This is the first segment of the book. There are 8 segments of the book out on Patreon now. So let's look at, so you name your Patreon page, you tell them what you're creating, which is basically a one-sentence description, come up with a profile photo, a cover photo. I chose a cover photo that kind of feels like a horizontal movie poster. We've got some of our main protagonists right up front in the foreground with the title in front of it. Let me make myself smaller. It'll make it a little easier for you to see. So we've got our protagonists in the foreground. We've got some baddies in the background, a little bit more translucent, opaque, screened back, like a movie poster. So I guess actually you can make you can customize your URL, make it different than the name of your page. I just realized that now. So you name your page, come up with the sentence for the thing you're creating, profile picture, cover photo. You come up with your Patreon URL. You can have custom color branding. I just kept mine black because it fits the style, this gritty story. Then you got your about page, which you can have some custom formatting. You can even put some code in there. I haven't seen people do a whole lot with it. They just use words the way I have. And then an intro video, which you saw. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. So the next thing you need after you've set up the basics of your page is supporting and affiliated social media accounts and websites. So let's talk about 4 before we talk about 4.5. So Bodhi the Movie Maker also has a YouTube channel. Northport has a Instagram page, a Instagram group, or excuse me, a Facebook group and a Facebook page. So these are all outlets through which I can let the public know, what's up, Gage? Where I can let the public know about this project. Because Patreon isn't going to promote my thing just because I made a Patreon page. They're not going to send it out to their newsletter or whatever. All the promotion and all the effort to tell people that you have a Patreon is on you. And so it's important to, once you've come up with the name for your Patreon, make social media pages that have the same name. I have Bodhi the Movie Maker everywhere. I have Northport Story, Northport 1999 everywhere. Now, that's the public sort of social media that you use to promote. Then there's the private stuff that you make to have a private community, like Discord. That's a chat room software where you can make private chat rooms or public chat rooms. And so you make a private and a public one for your project. And the private one is one of the things that your Patreon founding members pay to have access to. And I also have a private Facebook group. That's the same thing. I want it to be easy for my patrons to connect with my content. So instead of just putting the private stuff on Patreon, I also put it on these private groups. So they have an easy time of getting to it. If they prefer to see the private stuff on Facebook instead of having to open up Patreon and go there, then I've accommodated that by having a private Facebook group. So tiers and pledge levels. So you want to set up, what are you asking your patrons to, what monetary support are you asking for? Right now, we're just going to talk about the monthly subscription model. Patreon offers different models where people can pay per video you put out. If they want to watch it, they have to pay and they get access to just that. And then you put out another video, they have to pay to get access to that. But they're not signed up for a monthly thing. Right now, I'm just going to talk about the monthly thing because that's what I'm doing. And so you decide your pledge levels, meaning if you're going to have a pledge, one pledge for $1, where they get nothing, but they get to feel good for supporting you. I've seen people literally describe it that way. And then their next pledge up is $5, and you get access to the private community. And then the next pledge up is $10. For that, you get the privilege of being able to message me, and I'll message you back. I've seen people, essentially have that model where they divide it into a bunch of different tiers. For me, I decided to just start simple. $5 was the only tier at the beginning, and just have everything available within that, just to simplify it so that people didn't have to make a decision. Do I want to go 5? Do I want to go 10? And maybe, get overwhelmed and lose steam and not be inspired to do it anymore. I wanted it to be easy to, and I wanted it to be accessible to people of all income levels. And as you can see, $5, I'm giving people note cards regularly. They're getting a free signed copy of the book. They're getting their name put in the back of it. I really want to provide value to them, because the big thing that I'm getting out of this is just the community aspect, and getting to work with these people and getting to have that synergy of having their feedback and having them be on the inner circle of this project. So I'm getting a lot more than just the money out of it. So that's why I just decided, even if it doesn't make the best business sense, having all these perks associated with $5 a month, it was worth it to me. For you, you might want to be more numbers focused and really figure out, how many hours should I put into this, and have a more financially less artistically based reason for your tiers. 6. What do you post first and when? And my answer is you should have some content on there before you even make the thing public, because you want those first patrons to get a reward for being early adopters. You want things on there that they have to sign up for to see. So in my case, I posted, let's see if I have, what were the first things I posted? Yes, I do. So I'm going to share that now. This will give you an idea of how to prepare your campaign. So you're getting a behind the scenes view that only the patrons get to see. So let's start with the very first post. I put up Madeline Bishop. You saw her before. And so my goal with all the drawings was to put up a digital version first and then to come up with a physical note card. I don't have her right here, but I have, let's see, do I have her? Where the hell are you, Madeline? Okay, and then to make a physical note card that I could send out. So first we put out the digital, then we put out the physical. I think that's a great way to think about things. Like, how can you put out a little bit and then build on that? So if it's art, you put out the work in progress and then put out the finished thing, and then put out the redone. If you make a change to it, your patrons want to see your progression. Yep. So you can also set posts to be early release. So this went out to patrons 34 days before it went out to the public. So if you go to my Patreon now and you're not signed up, you can still see this post, because you can have your Patreon posts actually be visible to the public. So a small number of them are. So the first thing I put out was illustrations done by Gus Trouth. So part of my prep time for developing my Patreon campaign was art, coming up with art and coming up with post ideas. Then the next post, this is a public post. This is me reading the first page of my book. Of wicked men and the goings-on of the monsters they create. Before we continue to a place from which we cannot return, I want to remind you of a truth. So actually posting that, me reading the first page of my book, that was one of the best ways to, that was one of the most effective ways that I came up with to get patrons in the early days, was that first video of me reading the first page, and then I also put out the first page on Patreon. I said you could read it there, and that. So then the next post was sharing a live stream that I did with a podcaster, Crystal Detlefson. I figured out a way to stream that exclusively on my Patreon before it got published to the public. So again, I always try to figure out how to do things early for my patrons that will later come out to the public. So it was her podcast, but we did it through my streaming software, and we streamed it to Patreon exclusively, and then like a week later, posted it on her podcast. So, okay, let's go back to the presentation. We're wrapping it up here. There's a lot to talk about, but that's why we're going to do 3 more of these, where I'm really going to dive in on some of the finer details of the promoting and the social media aspect of it. So there is going to be a PDF with all this information coming soon and blog posts coming out on my website soon. So let's see, I think that was everything. And we will end with a picture of Madeline. And again, I will say thank you so much to my Patreon founding members for helping me get my book created, helping me get it turned into screenplays and short films, helping me get it selected to the world's largest TV festival. Couldn't have done it without you guys. And thank you again to the Minnesota State Arts Board for supporting these live streams. And thank you, viewer, for watching. Thank you, viewers. You guys are the best. If I missed any questions, which I might have because I'm streaming in a few different places, I will address them in the next video, which is Saturday. All right. Thank you guys so much. This was really fun. Hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, rest of your day. Bye.